Hello and welcome to the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, coming to you on a Thursday because we always bow to the demands of our guests. I'm your host, Joe Rimmer, joined today by Theo Squires. How are we, Theo?
Yeah, I'm all right. Nice to be here on a Thursday.
Yeah, and Mr. Prima Donna himself, Paul Gorst. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. I mean, I was good until I had to come in the office and do the pod that I asked for last week. But yeah, here we are, and they're ready to talk all things transfer related, I guess.
When Paul Gorst talks, we listen.
That's it.
That's it. And hopefully the listeners are listening too.
I have to bow to my own demands.
Yeah. Plenty to talk about today. We've enjoyed Trent Alexander-Arnold's unveiling at Real Madrid this morning. And he's thrown together that Spanish pretty quickly, hasn't he? Obviously, Florian Wirtz, Milos Kerkez, Darwin Núñez, all in the news this week. So plenty to get through. Should be good. Listeners and viewers, viewers will see that we've got a new logo, and our producer Ian has asked me to give it a little shout out. Ian, anything to say about it? Is your mic hooked up?
Do you want me mic to be hooked up? Hooked up even?
Yeah. Well done. Can you tell us more about our new logo?
It's just a new blood red logo, isn't it?
And you've also designed a new jingle for us as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I forgot to put the volume off of that though. So
yeah, all right. Well, you've been exposed. But anyway, hope you all like it. It's got lots of nice pictures of Liverpool lifting the Premier League, which is always good. But before we start, a shout out to our sponsors, NordVPN and in particular Saily. Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about Saily, which is a new app available for download from NordVPN. It's a new eSIM service app. It's great when you're travelling abroad this summer. Where are you going this summer?
Hong Kong and Japan.
Japan. It's going to be quite cool. Will you be taking Saily with you?
Yes, I'll have to, won't I?
Yeah, you certainly will. Yeah.
Need to keep up to date with what's going on.
Yeah. And it's great. You get affordable prices, you avoid scams, you protect your privacy 24/7 for support, and of course you save on mobile data. You can choose from several affordable eSIM data plans in over 200 destinations with the Saily eSIM, and you'll always have connection when needed. So go to the App Store, download Saily, and use our code BLOODRED, that's BLOODRED, at checkout to get 15% off your first purchase. For more information, go to the podcast episode description box and click saily.com/bloodred. Right. If you're watching on YouTube, please drop a question in the comments. We got loads of really good questions on Monday, and it really helped sort of shape the pod, didn't it? So please get in there and ask questions. If you'd like to send me one in advance, always happy to take them. joe.rimmer@reachplc.com. Send your questions in. We'll be recording again on Monday, so we can ask them then. Mondays, Fridays, it tends to be, unless Gorsty gets demanded. So you can always email them to me. Actually, before we start, I just wanted to give a shout out to Amos Waldman and Sam Carroll, who came in and recorded a special pod with me on Tuesday about LFC Stories, which you can see if you're watching on YouTube. You can see behind us, which is a book pulling together the best work from Dan Kay, who passed away a couple of years ago as an Echo journalist, campaigner, friend, podcaster. It's available in all bookstores now, and if you want to go back and listen to that podcast, it talks about Dan's life, his legacy, and what you can expect in that book. It was a really special podcast for us involved, an emotional one, and I've had some really nice comments and feedback already. So thank you for those of you who've sent me emails. Really, really appreciate it. I've passed it on to Amos and Sam as well, and they appreciate it as well. So thank you very much for that, and please do give that a listen when you get a chance.
And the reason for me trying to rearrange today's pod was, of course, because we're at Dan Kay's book launch tonight, aren't we?
Yeah,
at the Pierhead.
At the Liver Buildings. It should be a really nice event with lots of people speaking about Dan. So very much looking forward to that. And the book has a foreword by Sir Kenny Dalglish, who was Dan's hero, and says some really incredible things about Dan. So please give that a listen and go out and buy that book. Some of the proceeds will go to the Dan Kay Foundation, which supports those who suffer from mental health issues. So it's a really, really good cause. Okay, so let's start with plenty to talk about. Let's start with Florian Wirtz. Some updates earlier this week that the deal was done. We believe it's not quite there yet, but it's getting closer all the time. And I think there's a lot of people who might be quite frustrated that we're not seeing Florian Wirtz in a Liverpool shirt, but there's reasons for that, isn't there? And there's still a lot of confidence this deal gets over the line pretty soon.
I mean, I think maybe a few supporters have become a little bit sort of impatient because of the opening of the transfer window to facilitate deals for clubs who are in the Club World Cup. And Liverpool have obviously not partaken in that tournament, so to them, the sort of rejigging of the transfer window doesn't mean a whole lot. You know, they are free to negotiate during June as they always have been, and haven't really placed any emphasis on signing players while the window was open, because as long as they're in before pre-season, then it doesn't really matter when you do it, essentially. So Liverpool are continuing to negotiate, and I know people might roll their eyes and say, is this dragging on? But it's actually been less than 3 weeks since Florian Wirtz communicated his intention to join Liverpool over Bayern Munich. So not a long time, really, particularly when you're talking of a deal of this size. You know, new ground for Liverpool, in that it's going to be upwards of 100 million. It's going to be a new club record. You know, these things take time, and that is where we are at the moment. So Liverpool have offered 100 million base, and then everything above that is the subject of negotiation. So the latest offer was around 114 million. Leverkusen holding out for 126 million. That's in pounds, which should be in line with their asking price of 150 million euros. And the conversations I've had about it is Liverpool have got no intention of going near 126 million. So I think there will be a middle ground to be found at some stage. You know, how much that leans closer to 114, how much that leans closer to 126. I guess we'll wait and see. What's the structure of the add-ons? It's going to be appearance-based. There will be some sort of, success-related one. I always think when Liverpool signed Darwin Núñez, and I think £21 million worth of add-ons, a lot of it was appearance-based, and then some of it was based around winning the Premier League, winning the Champions League. So it's just about dotting the T's and crossing the I's at the moment. I don't think there's any need for anyone to be concerned of it not being done yet. It's a historic deal for Liverpool. They are negotiating, almost daily at the moment, and he will be a Liverpool player. It's just a case of when that's going to be, and I fully expect him to still be on board for the beginning of pre-season on July the 7th, and potentially make his debut against Preston later that week.
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool negotiate hard, don't they? They don't throw these deals together. It's such a big deal, and the broad agreements are there, but like Gorsty says, that the add-ons can always be a sticking point, can't they? Because you don't want add-ons that Liverpool will want to put add-ons that are aspirational. Leverkusen will want add-ons that almost guarantee them the money. So there's a lot of negotiating to go in that part of the fee, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. We addressed this on Monday's podcast, didn't we? We had a few questions, and one was about add-ons, and I brought it back to Sadio Mane when the add-ons that Bayern Munich were initially offering for him were you have to win the Champions League basically every year in the contract and the Ballon d'Or, and you can obviously look at that and go, it's never going to happen. So it does take some negotiating here. Liverpool, I think there's been a few players they've signed, and they will have had to pay these add-ons. Darwin Núñez is one, because they've just won the Premier League. They've done well in Europe. Mm-hmm. They are achieving these things. So Leverkusen will look at that success that Liverpool have had on the pitch and try and get a little bit more money out of them to get it closer to that asking price. When you look at the overall fee so far, 113, 114 million, you look at that and you think maybe Liverpool are trying to avoid breaking the British record, which is 115 million, and then just be getting that meeting moment in the middle there, getting that ground met up. Because it's a difficult one to negotiate, because it is this player that Bayer Leverkusen don't want to sell, and they're only bowing down to his wish to go because he said, okay, I want a new challenge. And Liverpool are the only team who are in for him now. They are the club he wants to join. So that's why there should be confidence it's going to get done. Sport is probably a bit anxious because you've seen Caicedo go elsewhere, Lavia go elsewhere, Jude Bellingham, Lenny Yoro. There's been so many of these sagas that haven't ended well for Liverpool in terms of that individual pursuit. But this is a case of one player wants one club, and it's just getting those final details ironed down.
There's also some talk of Cologne, who his previous club, being owed compensation for sort of a sell-on clause, and I think maybe it's a training compensation fee and stuff. And no one really seems to have any idea as to what that might be, how much the percentage it might be. I've seen reports ranging from 1.5 to 5%, and I think Cologne's sporting director was on German radio recently talking about it as well. So that's a point that they're going to have to iron out, whether that's Leverkusen who pays that or Liverpool paying additional premium. We're not privy to these negotiations, but what we do know is there's a lot of talks to be had over how it's all paid, and I still wouldn't worry if I was a supporter. I think he will be a Liverpool player sooner rather than later, and he'll be, coming to the Premier League.
There's a lot of frustration, and some people have said in the comments that one of those frustrations is reading things every day that say a similar thing, but isn't that because right now Liverpool and Leverkusen are just in the weeds of negotiating, and that all parties believe the same thing, that he will come to Liverpool? And also there's an element of, and look, I understand why, but people may be going a little bit early with it's done when it might be broadly done, but it's not completely done, and that's I suppose a difference.
Yeah, I guess so. As I say, the conversation I had yesterday morning about it was very clear in terms of where Liverpool are up to with it. The 100 million is pretty much, it's going to be a deal that's going to exceed that. The initial offer of 109 was turned down, and then the improved one around about 114.
Yeah,
not necessarily rejected, but it's been the almost the catalyst for talks to almost accelerate, if you like, if you can, as it does seem to be. In the supporters' eyes, sort of dragging on, but it's brought the two clubs a lot closer to what you would deem to be an agreement. So, yeah, like I say, I can understand a little bit of supporters' impatience. There's no games, there's no training, there's no friendlies. You're almost just scouring the Echo website every day for updates, I guess, aren't you? And he will be a Liverpool player at some stage, but the negotiations are ongoing, and that's not a lot we can do about that, I guess.
Theo, someone's asked, can you explain whether the club can sign a player before the 16th of June? They can't technically. I mean, they could agree everything, but they can't technically.
Yeah, it's the same as any other season. You can sign a player at any point. It's just not done until that actual deadline has passed or the window is opened. So you could do it today, you could do it tomorrow. Doesn't matter. He's still going to be a Liverpool player. Yeah. It's just waiting. The only difference is, likes of Man City and Chelsea. Obviously, we saw City sign 4 players in 3 days. They had to get them in so they could go into the Club World Cup group stages. Liverpool aren't really having to deal with that. They don't have to worry about that. It makes no difference whatsoever. Like, technically, Mohamed Ashley's not a Liverpool player yet, and that one's probably going to wait until July the 1st, when the European window would normally open and when contracts normally end. But you still know it's a done deal. It was announced last summer. It's agreed. Just waiting for those dates to come.
I mean, it makes no odds, does it, really, when there are no competitive games, whether Liverpool can officially sign a player today or next week? They're free to negotiate the terms about it all. So as long as they can do that, then it's fine. A transfer window is only for the literal registration, isn't it? Clubs are free to negotiate at any point during the season. The only reason they don't is because they've got the games and they've got all that to worry about. So, it's just semantics, really, where Liverpool are concerned anyway, with the new transfer window and the specifics around it, because they're not involved in the Club World Cup. So, even if the transfer window is closed as it is now, they're still able to talk over bringing in Kerkez, Wirtz, or whoever.
Yeah. We saw it with Trent and Frimpong, didn't we, only last month? Those deals were done with 2 days left in May, and so they're not completely done until June
Sunday,
1st.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then someone's asked, do you think that Leverkusen are bundling in some unrealistic add-ons just to pump up the price for 150 million out of prestige or heightening their profile? I wouldn't have thought so. They're not going to put unrealistic add-ons, are they? They're going to want add-ons that actually.
I think they want it done just as quickly as Liverpool. They've accepted that the player wants to move and he will move, and I think they'd rather have the money through the gate to basically give Erik ten Hag the money to rebuild with Simon Rolfes, the sporting director. I read something in Bild the other day that basically said they're already looking at how they're going to spread the Wirtz windfall, and they did something similar in 2020, was it, when they sold Kai Havertz to Chelsea, and that basically made the bulk of the squad that enabled them to compete under Xabi Alonso. So they're not, they're basically looking to travel the same path, and I guess that's why we've seen them linked to Jarell Kwanzaa, haven't we? But I don't think Leverkusen are looking to hold this up for any untoward reason. I think they've accepted he's going and want to try and rebuild after a pretty big summer in terms of decimating their squad. Jeremy Frimpong's already left. Jonathan Tah has obviously gone to Bayern Munich on a free transfer. They've lost someone else who was on loan at Napoli. So they need to rebuild themselves.
That's another thing to consider as well, that Frimpong, he was a relative bargain, wasn't he? Because there's a release clause in that contract. If you didn't have that release clause, you're not getting Frimpong for less than 30 million. So Leverkusen will definitely not want to be letting Liverpool look like they've won this transfer. They'll want to get as much as they can and get a fair price.
And also as well, this idea that it's a bit of a saga. Liverpool signed Ryan Gravenberch 2 years ago and they signed him in late August, and everyone knew full well of their interest 3-4 months out before he eventually joined. So, I mean, that's a real saga. This has been less than 3 weeks from start to finish, really. So,
just like Trent, over a year long.
Yeah, I just think there's maybe a little bit of impatience because of the time of the year there is.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, isn't it? I think there's quite a lot of excitement over it. It's such a big deal, one that Liverpool haven't really done before. I think it's understandable why people are a bit like, what's going on? We thought this was done. And it's not quite there. But I think the fact that there's so much confidence that it will get done tells you all you need to know. And as you said earlier, it's one player wants one club. Leverkusen have accepted that he will go. And that should tell you the outcome, really, shouldn't it? And I know someone's mentioned there that Caicedo went on for months and only really happened when Liverpool got involved. But I think in that case, from what I remember, Brighton and Chelsea were quite far off in terms of a fee.
Yeah, they didn't agree until Liverpool had already agreed a fee, so Chelsea's hand was forced.
Yeah.
Whereas we know here the basic fee's already agreed. It's just the add-ons.
Don't think there's a particularly good relationship either with Chelsea and Brighton. The way Chelsea took obviously Graham Potter and a host of backroom staff, didn't he? And I think Brighton were happy to have Liverpool's involvement, if only briefly, to bump up the price.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Lots of good questions coming in, so please do keep them coming in. I'm keeping an eye on the comments. We've got one big transfer saga out the way, but there's another one that we need to ask about. John O'Neill says, seeing Doyle is not there, there are rumours that there's been a transfer approach from Arsenal TV for Ian. I mean, I'll carry him there if they've made an approach. Where do you think he would go? Do you think he'll go to Arsenal TV?
No, I mean, would he fit in? It's a
Would he fit in the system?
Very shouty channel at Arsenal TV, I believe.
But I mean, Ian, for Ian to have a new set of people he could disagree with would be great for his.
He's only got a couple more podcast appearances before he disappears for 3 weeks, is it?
Yeah.
So he could be holding plenty of talks in that time for all we know.
Yeah, the Doylecation starts, doesn't it, in a few weeks? So, enjoy him while you've got him, because he does disappear in the summer. He goes into like summer hibernation, doesn't he? Doyle, he's like a reverse bear in many respects. That's that rumour cleared up. Right, where else are we? Oh, John O'Neill's asked again. Hopefully we've cleared that Ian Doyle one up. It's not true. He's not going to Arsenal TV. We wouldn't sell Ian for any fee.
Not even for the right add-ons, achievable add-ons.
Achievable ones, yeah. We could make a deal work. Alan says, is it true Gerrard is coming back to work with Slot? Not heard about that.
I doubt it.
Haven't heard that one.
No, I haven't heard that one.
It'd be good to have him around.
What do you mean?
Just
hanging around.
Back on board.
Just
big name, isn't he?
I think Sander Westerveld put his name out there when they were talking about assistants, but then that was only so he could...
Westerveld just threw his name out
I'll
there? Gerrard's name? I thought
Gerrard's
he's thrown his own name.
No.
I'll do it.
But that's when he then, I think he said the one who was just left Shakhtar Donetsk, who had been his first team coach at Feyenoord, he was saying he should be the man they hire.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, actually, on the assistants, because you look at Fabian Otter was with the United States goalkeeping team, wasn't he, before he joined Liverpool. They've obviously got Sipka Hulshoff come in. Adam Briggs wasn't with him at Feyenoord, was he? So I think he was brought in from Belgium, wasn't he? Somewhere in Belgium.
Yeah.
So
Heitzinger hadn't worked with him before.
Yeah,
either.
It's not necessarily a case of Slot just bringing all this backroom staff from his previous club. There's a very selective thing going on here, and that means it could be open to anyone, really, couldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. What about Kerkez then? We've discussed where it's Kerkez. Again, I mean, I can't remember many players more transparent about where they want to go than Kerkez. But again, it feels like one that Liverpool are locked in negotiations.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this, because I think it come out the day of the Brighton game, which is nearly a month ago now, that Liverpool were going to do a deal, but nearly a month later, they still haven't tabled an offer. They are in talks with Bournemouth, and it's Richie Hughes leading the negotiation again with Simon Francis, his counterpart at Bournemouth, and the two are good friends. They know each other from the time together at Bournemouth, and Bournemouth are actually on the east coast of America at the moment, which might make conversations a little bit more difficult with the time difference. But yeah, the negotiations are ongoing. Liverpool haven't yet submitted an offer. Bournemouth looking for around about 45 million, we believe. Liverpool trying to chip that down a little bit. They obviously know it's going to be a big spend in summer with Wirtz and Frimpong already through the door, and possibly even a centre forward on the agenda. So Yeah, talks are ongoing. I don't think there's any real concern that this one's going to fall away, and in truth it hasn't actually started yet because Liverpool haven't tabled the bid. But yeah, still fully expect him to be a Liverpool player, and talks again are ongoing. And I know supporters roll their eyes at that phrase and stuff, and they just want the latest updates, but they are the updates. We can't just invent the news, and that is what's happening.
Yeah, people. I think people forget that there's millions upon millions upon millions of pounds at stake here. It's. I think there's that thing, isn't it? That sometimes you can see on deadline day, clubs can force through a deal pretty quickly if they want to, but when they have time and space, they're not. They're going to sort of quibble over the details a bit, aren't they? And they're not going to just bow to Bournemouth's demands or Leverkusen's demands, and nor should they. Really, should they?
No, they shouldn't. It is just about negotiating, getting the best deal for all parties. Like with Bournemouth, Richard Hughes obviously was their sporting director. He was the one who signed Kerkez in the first place. So he's got the good relations there. It's going to be a deal that gets done. You can just understand why Liverpool prioritising getting Wirtz done at the moment. And you look at the deals they have done. Well, we already knew Mohamed Ashley was coming in, so Keller has gone. Yeah. We knew Trent was going, so Frimpong comes in. And Wirtz is going to be this marquee signing. Well, you want to bring in a left-back, you want Kerkez, but you've still got two left-backs, senior left-backs, on the books as it stands. And that's without counting Owen Beck, Luke Chambers, and that it's a balancing act. So while you assume Kostas Tsimikas is the player that's going to make way, Liverpool is still going to have one eye there. And is anyone actually coming for him, or just Andy Robertson go with a year left on his contract? It is a balancing act. It's hard for them to do everything at once. And when you have got this time to play with, like we are still only in mid-June, window doesn't close until September. By all means, take your time, make sure it's right.
Might also be a case of them waiting to sign a replacement. They are close to signing a left back from Rennes, I think, whose name escapes me. So it might be a case of them waiting to wrap that one up before Liverpool progress further with talks to bring in Kerkez.
Yeah. Okay. Still got loads of questions coming in. Let's move on to the striker situation because lots have asked around that theme. Some reports early this week that there's some Saudi interest in Nunes. They had previously been interested in January. But lots of people asking who they could possibly sign. Redman asked with regards to the striker position, what about Ramos at PSG? He scores goals, presses, can play across the front and can't get in the PSG team. Another person's asked, so which striker are we signing? Alvarez, Isaac, Osimhen, Atike? I think we're in for another big surprise after Wirtz. So lots of people wanting to know whether they'll sign a striker. Do you think this is a case, Theo, of wait till they move some people out the club before they go and splash in that type of...
There certainly needs to be some movement on outgoings, so you've got the space there, whether it's Chiesa, Nunes, Jota, Diaz. You want some movement there so you can open the talks. But it is a very complicated market because so many clubs are looking for centre forwards. Like, Arsenal are, Manchester United are, Chelsea still are, despite the fact they've already signed Delap. And
Chelsea are always looking for a forward, aren't they?
Yeah. There's nothing for everyone.
Yeah. It's the same small elite pool, the same 6-7 names that everyone's getting linked to. I'd imagine Alvarez or Isaac are the ones at the top of everyone's lists, but Newcastle don't seem like they're under any obligation to sell at the moment. They've qualified for the Champions League, and by all means, it sounds like Alvarez is happy at Atletico. I don't think his family particularly like living in England. So then it's looking at the rest of them. Well, Arsenal seem to be leading the chase for Sesko, maybe the Frankfurt striker, Ekitike, because Chelsea couldn't agree a fee before the deadline here. Maybe that's one that comes back into play later in the window. But Liverpool are already negotiating a club record fee for Florian Wirtz. So that is the one you have to prioritise there. Then you wait for someone to come and give you ridiculous money for a Darwin Núñez, so you've got the space, or Luis Diaz. It's a hard one.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. In terms of, Theo mentioned space in the squad, space on the wage bill, because if they bring someone in, it's going to be a big money, sort of all singing, all dancing number 9, isn't it? And a lot depends on what happens with Darwin Núñez. The Al Hilal stuff, I had a couple of conversations with about to the other day, and there's been no official approach. So it sounds as though potentially, it was one of those sorts of mad transfer deadline day dashes that never really went anywhere. If they did make an inquiry about Darwin Núñez, the fact that he hasn't gone to a Saudi club while the window was open for the Club World Cup is quite telling for me, because I think of all the clubs involved in that competition, I think the Saudi clubs will be the ones most determined to make a splash because of the prestige, because of the money. Maybe gives the league a bit more credence on the global scale if a few teams do well in there. So the fact that Núñez is still a Liverpool player suggests to me that maybe the interest there isn't quite as pronounced as it might have been in January, which probably not good news from Liverpool's perspective. I think they would have wanted a wide market for Núñez if they are looking to sell him, particularly from Saudi clubs who we know bid more than European clubs. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Being links to Atletico Madrid, could they do a deal with Alvarez? Maybe a bit of a swap. It might be pie in the sky thinking, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. I'd be shocked if Núñez stays a Liverpool player, but it doesn't look like there's clubs beating the door down at the moment.
Yeah. With Saudi, they always seem to leave deals quite late as well, as though it's going to force a European club's hand. Going, here's a ridiculous amount of money. You've got 24 hours to say yes or no, and pressure
did
deals.
That with Salah, didn't they?
Yeah, they've done it a few times, so it's maybe not a surprise it hasn't happened now. But they've still got the second window. If they came back in for him, he could play in the knockout stages if they signed him. But you've got to consider the players, what they want to do as well. Like we know Barcelona, for example, have made an approach with Luis Diaz, and we suspect there's Saudi interest there. Luis Diaz is a Barcelona supporter. He'd probably prefer to go to Barca than Saudi. But then Liverpool, if it's a choice of selling for 40 million, a player who they've said they don't want to sell, or 80 million, you're obviously going to choose Saudi. So it's a very difficult one to get right there for everyone.
Yeah, I feel like with Núñez especially, and the striker position in general, I feel like you look at teams like Chelsea who buy first and sell second is the way I see they do business. I think Liverpool will there go, we're bringing in Wirtz, we're bringing in Kerkez, we've already brought in Frimpong, we've moved out Trent, but you don't, if you end up buying those players, if they spend 100 million on a striker as well, clubs will then know that Liverpool want a bit back, and they can kind of hold your feet to the fire with Núñez a bit. And the last thing you want from as Liverpool's point of view is to send Núñez out on a year's loan somewhere that isn't guaranteed, or end up with him on the wage bill for years to come. They will want him off the wage bill, I'm sure, before they go committing to another big money forward. And I think that's the correct way of doing business. It might not be the exciting way, but I think it's the correct way.
I think there's two markets for Núñez, isn't there? The Saudi one, which you're looking at upwards of maybe 70 million euros, and then the European one, which is probably more realistic after 3 years at Liverpool, where he's blown hot and cold, round about the 40 mark maybe, and Liverpool might have to face up to the realisation of taking a little bit of a loss on this one and moving him on. And Liverpool, not sort of well structured as other clubs, shall we say, in terms of absorbing a transfer dud. You look at Chelsea and it is ludicrous how they work at times, just move players on. Players who paid big money for, haven't worked, move them on, forget about it, sign someone else. Liverpool don't operate like that at all, do they? So, two different models of operating. And yeah, I think if there is European interest there in Núñez, I think they might just have to accept, not obviously a bit of a paltry sum, but accept that they're not going to be looking to make a profit on a player who costs that much.
There is potentially a third market in there in terms of PSR. Like we saw the Gordon Gomez swap deal last year, where no way Joe Gomez was worth 45 million, no way Gordon was worth 75 million. But both clubs, you're happy to pay that little bit more to get something done. Now, I'm not sure which clubs are forced to sell under PSR obligations at the moment, but that deadline's in 2-3 weeks. So maybe Núñez comes into play there. Liverpool have been linked with Nkunku at Chelsea, for example, in the past. We know he's going to be available this summer. Maybe that's something that when Chelsea have been linked with Núñez, they do a dodgy PSR swap there, getting the fees up a little bit more. And I think Núñez has also now been linked with Napoli as well. So Osimhen's going to be available. There's just so many sides here looking to move on strikers and looking to sign strikers as well. And they all want to get the best deal, and they all want to get the most prolific number 9 who's going to fit their side most successfully. And as we've seen, it's not that easy. Only so many of these players can actually go and deliver and be the best in the business. And the ones like Isak who are cost a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, I think wherever Núñez goes, I think if he finds the right club, whether that be in Spain, Saudi's a little bit different, but if he goes somewhere to Spain, I think if he went to an Atletico Madrid, I think he'd score goals. And I think people would say, Liverpool have done this, that, and the other, they've missed a trick with Núñez. but it just hasn't fitted for him, has it? And he hasn't fitted in. He hasn't fitted in under Slot either. But I definitely think there's a player there. So I think eventually some interest will surface for Núñez because people must see the potential.
And he's only 25, isn't he? And you look at what he's done in his career. He obviously scored goals at a great rate, didn't he? In Benfica, the year Liverpool brought him in. Under Klopp, he was getting chances left and right, wasn't he? And you kept saying, if he could just finish a few more of these. Scores 15 in his debut season. That goes up to 18 in his second season. And you think, starting to see a player who could take flight. And it just hasn't worked on the Slot. It's been a change of style, and that has been a decrease in the not only goals. He only scored 7 this season, but the amount of chances that have come his way. And, he started to look more and more like a passenger, and he's only started one Premier League game this calendar year, which was at home to Southampton, which, not even theoretically, which was the easiest game of the season, really. So
he's lucky not to get sent off in that. He goes and wins the penalty, scores his goal, but he could have easily been sent off before half time.
So it hasn't worked. Liverpool don't very rarely get big money transfers wrong, but this is one that hasn't really worked out. And I think he'll leave with the best wishes and big pat on the back and well done for helping us win the Premier League, but hasn't quite worked out. Now, until that happens, I guess it's just a case of who might be in for him and how much they might be able to get.
Which of those forwards, by the way, of all the ones mentioned just now and others linked, would you be most interested in?
Alvarez is the dream, but I don't think he's coming back to England. Then it's probably Isak. I've always got that little seed of the injuries he's had at Newcastle.
Why do you think Alvarez not back to England?
I don't think his family settled.
Really,
It just seems that it was a strange move for City to sell him in the first place, and he's gone and had such a good season with Atletico Madrid. It's a good fit for him there.
I accept that. I just wonder whether I thought at City maybe they sold him because they just had Haaland and thought you're not going to get ahead of him.
I mean, they got huge money for him.
Yeah, and they got big money, but he might be right because I think the chance to go and play for Liverpool and start every week for Liverpool might tempt him, but you might be right.
I'd probably go with Isak over Alvarez. I love both. I think either in that Liverpool team would be tremendous, but I was thinking this last night, and I can't remember the last time Liverpool had a striker, number 9, who scored 20 goals. Probably Firmino in 17, 18.
Yeah.
So that's going back a fair few years now, isn't it? Jota has been really good, minus the injuries, but this season they've perhaps caught up with them. Núñez has blown hot and cold, as we've said. So, I'd love to see Liverpool go and look to bring in a big money striker, and then you've got, Florian Wirtz feeding them with the archetypal number 10 through balls, and Salah's still there. Diaz, hopefully he stays. Gakpo. So, Isak would be my one, but I couldn't see it happening if they're spending that much on Wirtz.
I've also got a bit of intrigue in what happens with Osimhen, just because it is a market opportunity there. There's a release clause they want rid, and he scores so many goals wherever he goes. It's a bit chaotic.
As soon as he went to Turkey, I just sort of stopped paying attention to him for whatever reason.
He's done it in France, Italy, Belgium, Turkey now. Years after years, he's got 2 league titles in 2 years, and you just know it's the opportunity.
He looked like he was going to be the next big thing when he battered Liverpool. What was it, 3 years ago now?
But that's why I've got that intrigue there, because it's like, well, he's still pretty young. Whoever gets him, it's an opportunity to get him back to that level he wants to be at in front of everyone and prove a few people wrong. But it's also a bit chaotic. It's a punt.
He smells like Chelsea to me. Osimhen.
Yeah.
That's the sort of player they would sign. I don't know. Look, someone in the comments talked about his attitude. I can't sit here and say I know a great deal about his attitude. I just feel like
when he moved to Turkey, for me, I was just a bit like, why is it that strange move to have such a young player?
Absolutely,
with a high ceiling. And then once that happened, there's like, well, he mustn't be the real deal. I mean, maybe that's too simplistic way of looking at it, but we haven't got time to be tracking all these players who don't play for Liverpool.
If he feels like one whose agent has shopped him round to every club in Europe, and maybe wages is kind of like a very big, seems an ego is what I'm saying, and I don't know whether Liverpool would want an ego.
Yeah, it might not fit, but at the same time, it is that opportunity there to get a prolific striker for lower than his market value. So I'm not saying it's one that it's front of Q4 now, but if you get closer to end of July, August, you still need a centre forward, and he's still on the market, he might come into play.
Do you think Chiesa will stay? Do you think any money can be raised from him?
It's gone quite quiet, hasn't it, on Chiesa? and I do think if you sell Núñez, Jota I probably think will stay. The next question I was going to ask you both is on Diaz, so we'll get to that in a moment. But I feel like it's too much of a turnover if you moved Chiesa on. It would be nice if they kept him, but then he was used so little last season that I just don't understand why would anyone want him to stay? Why would he want to stay where he barely plays?
And even if he comes in and has a good pre-season, Carvalho had a good pre-season last year, Elliott had a good pre-season last year, and it was still moved on, or you're not first choice. They've signed Frimpong. He's going to be that alternative to Salah.
If the manager really liked him, he would have played more.
And that's it. So that's got a lovely way of saying one thing and then doing the opposite, and you still sort of say, well, he said this the other week. I was in the room with him a couple of weeks back when he was talking about Chiesa getting a full pre-season, and he's definitely got a future, and we'll get a good look at him. And you think, you come out of it thinking, big summer ahead for Chiesa, and then you're looking at it and thinking, well, he's played about 150 minutes all season, one Premier League start after the Premier League title had already been won. I can't see it myself, but I get that Slot's not exactly going to say, well, no, we're looking for any old offer, inviting all the offers.
We'll go to Arsenal TV with Ian.
And he's not been making the squad when Núñez has, and we know Slot hasn't fancied Núñez. They're going to get rid of him. Granted, you probably want to protect Núñez's market value more than Chiesa's when you got Chiesa for a pittance in the first place. But I just can't see him forcing his way back in. It's going to be hard for him, because even if you go put him in a different position, he's not physical enough. He's not big enough to be a centre forward in English football, really. And then on the left, you're competing with Gakpo, you're competing with Diaz if he stays. Wirtz can play there. It's just so hard for him to get those minutes. He was obviously so good 4 years ago when he was touted as a £100 million player, but that isn't necessarily the player Liverpool signed.
I did like the idea of Liverpool having 6 players, though, in that forward line, which meant that however way they sort of changed it, they were all senior players.
Yeah.
But I've just got a feeling that if they sold Chiesa, they wouldn't bother with a 6th option. It'd just be the 5. And
maybe the right player at the wrong time. Kind of like Iago Aspas all those years ago. If he'd been there a year later when Squires has gone, maybe it went differently for him. But you've got Salah there.
Someone here has asked, is Frimpong really a Salah alternative? And I think he is. I think he plays right down that right side.
He plays for the Netherlands. That's what Koeman sees him as, a right winger.
Yeah, so I think you're right.
People at Liverpool have spoken about it. So I think it is an option when Salah goes to Morocco around about Christmas time, is it? For the Africa Cup of Nations. We could see Frimpong in there. Yeah. So maybe that is, sell Chiesa and just Frimpong can play there and Conor Bradley at right back and move, crack on that way.
It's remarkable that there could be so much flux in a squad that's just won the Premier League at a canter, really. But I suppose it speaks to the job that Slot did last season and just where some of them are at in their Liverpool careers. Let's just talk quickly about Diaz, because a few people have asked about him. Liverpool have made it quite clear that they don't want to sell, but those rumours and suggestions haven't really gone away. It smells very much, Theo, like what the Spanish clubs do, Barcelona do. They start laying that groundwork and talking about how much the player wants to go there. Do you see a future where he moves to Barcelona, or do you think that Liverpool will stand firm?
Barcelona will probably have to sell a few players and raise a bit more money first. Like, Liverpool aren't going to sell him on the cheap. They'll want to make a profit. And when you look at market values elsewhere, it was your piece, wasn't it, last week, Gorsty, where Bruno Fernandes, 100 million. Granted, you're not going to get that off Barcelona, but you're still going to want significantly more than you'd imagine they can pay in financial difficulties. But Diaz, if he wants to go, presumably wants Barcelona over Saudi, because it's the club he's always dreamed of. What's different to last year is this summer he's actually spoken about it. He's admitted he's been speaking to clubs, but he's also said he'd be happy to sign a new contract with Liverpool. But Liverpool aren't opening talks with him. He's at this funny age where it's a good time to sell him. You've probably got a couple of years left at your absolute peak before you start to decline. So Liverpool are open to keeping him for those 2 years and letting him go on a free. It's very political there. All these spinning plates, seeing who's going to come out on top. Clubs want him. Liverpool want him to stay. He wants to stay, but then he wants to go as well if Liverpool aren't going to give him a contract.
I think it's going to be the saga of the summer for Liverpool, really. I mean, they've got no intention of selling him, and Barcelona were quickly rebuffed when they made the approach last week. But, having said that, if a certain figure was wafted under the nose, I think they'd think long and hard about it. And I don't think Barcelona at the moment have got the money to do that. Like Theo says, by all accounts, they are once again struggling financially, and do they have the money to offer what would make Liverpool blink? A player who's become such an important one under Arne Slot. Scored 17 goals last season, 13 in the Premier League, was a big part of the team that the cancer to the Premier League, really, wasn't he? So with 2 years left on his deal and an age of 28, Liverpool are relaxed about it, really. Don't see any need to delve into contract talks with him, but I think he is desperate to basically earn a bit more money. I know there was a figure doing the rounds on the internet about how much he earns, which is dismissed strongly by people at Liverpool, but I still think he thinks that he should be earning a few more quid. And coming off the performances of last season, you can see why you might feel that way, to be fair to him. If he's one of the lowest earners in the squad, he hasn't had a contract extension since he joined in January 2022. And his importance to the cause is obvious, so he feels he should be earning more money. But there's more thinking that goes into it now, isn't it, than just reward for good form. Liverpool have got to think about not necessarily the next year or two, but maybe, the next 3 years, the next 4 years. What does that look like? What's your output for Diaz if he's a high earner and he's not contributing? So I think Liverpool are relaxed at the moment. I think Diaz, speaking frankly, I think he would like to move to Barcelona, but he's more than happy at Liverpool. He's said as much to club media, to media in Spain, and he spoke last week, didn't he, about speaking to clubs, and I think that possibly would have meant Barcelona and Liverpool about potentially extending. So, yeah, I think this has just got the potential to run and run, but what we do know is Liverpool aren't going to sell him, certainly on the cheap, and Barcelona will have to do something quite eye-watering to get it over the line.
Liverpool already doing something if they think they can at least improve the squad as well. Like, we've seen a few club secrets come out, haven't we, in terms of like Ian Graham talking about recruitment and everything, and that is going to have to be the case. They're not going to do Barcelona a favour here, let them go on the cheap. It's one of the reasons why Núñez didn't go in January, because they could have made a decent bit of money off him going Saudi there, but they wanted the squad as strong as it could be, and if it's going to be stronger for having Luis Diaz in it than whoever could replace him, you keep him.
Look at the goal he scored the other night for Colombia, by the way. If you haven't seen it,
stunning.
It's a brilliant sort of individual goal, wasn't it? Where he beats 2 or 3 men and sticks it away. And that's the sort of stuff that he can do. And it's always puzzled me a little bit as to how easily a lot of people have been to theoretically discard Diaz. I think he's a really good player, an important player in that front line. And you don't want to be, throwing that away too easily, because sometimes it's better the devil isn't it? You can talk about replacements, but you know what you're going to get from Luis Diaz. I think probably can be improved upon, but it's a small pool that you're swimming in when you're looking for replacements, I think.
My thing with that goal is he doesn't do it enough for Liverpool. We haven't seen him do it enough at Liverpool, so that's the level he's got to find to get that new contract.
That to me hits the nail on the head. I think with Diaz, he's such a brilliant player, and there aren't too many better than him, but there's always that feeling that perhaps you could upgrade on him. And I do find it weird that Liverpool are sort of giving it that we don't want to sell, but also don't seem to be in a rush to negotiate a new contract. And I think if you're Diaz, you probably are looking at it going, well, you don't want to sell me, but you don't want to commit to me. So I think that there was something Kerkez said recently about players at Liverpool now that Edwards is back, higher up than Hughes, and then they've got Hughes, and that is Liverpool will be happy to sell most players if they've got their price, and I think Diaz certainly falls into that category of if the right offer came in, they would sell. They're just not going to sell him, like you say, on the cheap. They're not going to carry him out the door. He's not like Núñez where they'll be actively looking for a buyer, but I'd be really interested how they'd react if they got a 70-80 million pound bid for Diaz.
Probably accept and go and ask Newcastle what Gordon's going for.
Yeah, but then how do you react?
I also think that's where this Bruno Fernandes comparison comes in, because he was the subject of 100 million, wasn't he? Was it Al Hilal before he pledged his allegiance to United? So Liverpool are looking at that thing and, well, this is the going rate for proven Premier League stars. We'll look at what Luis Diaz has just done, and we're not going to sell him on the cheap because he's important to us. Yeah. But if you offer that, then we'll have a good think about it.
Yeah. Let's finish off by talking Trent, just because he was unveiled today. said and done.
I feel a bit uneasy about calling him Trent now that he's actively using it as his marketing tool.
I was doing it in the blog just to get used to it, and it didn't feel quite right.
I'm now going to go the other way and just call him Alexander-Arnold.
Look, I'll be quite honest. I was one of those people that I really didn't like the booing of him at Anfield. I said a lot of these pods that I think people, I just didn't like the response. But there are a lot of things that he's done that haven't helped himself. I mean, I know it's great that he's for Real Madrid that he's gone out there and spoke fluent Spanish in his first press conference. But it certainly doesn't do his story of, this is a long and hard decision. It took me a while. It doesn't back that up.
He's just learning Spanish at the time to keep his options open.
Exactly, it doesn't back that up. And I mean,
while he's listening to his Rosetta Stone.
My Duolingo streak is at 218 days, by the way, that's a great effort. But Trent's he's got to have been doing more than 5 minutes Duolingo a day to have spoke Spanish like that in front of the assembled press. He's, I mean, there's a lot gone on, isn't there, before he left with the Ballon d'Or stuff that he said, which he's now wrote back on a little bit. His whole family were there. I know they would be there anyway, but it felt like the realization of a longer held ambition than he's been letting on.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I still think is fine. People might not like that, but there are other clubs than Liverpool, and Trent just isn't diehard Liverpool that like many people thought he was. And his contract was up, and that's as much the club's fault as his own for letting that get to a place. But yeah, I mean, some of the stuff, the rebranding as Trent rather than Alexander-Arnold, the Spanish speaking and all that, I just find it all a bit cringe.
Yeah, I was speaking to someone today with sort of knowledge of how that works, and apparently it would have cost a fair few thousands to have changed his Twitter handle as a sort of verified user with that many followers. So not sure whose pocket that's coming out of, maybe Adidas's or Real Madrid's. But a mate of mine speaks Spanish, actually, and he was sort of saying that Trent's Spanish was maybe not as great as we all thought it was.
Oh, really? Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to get up there and give it the Hala Madrid and the rest of it. So he's clearly been brushing up on his Spanglish, hasn't he? And it's that, like you say, he obviously is looking to ingratiate himself to the new club and the new fans and all that. And I get that to an extent, but yeah, as soon as he started speaking the way he did, so fluently to non-Spanish speakers like myself, I did sort of raise an eyebrow and think, oh, well, he must have been learning this for a while.
Yeah. Anything to say on Trent?
I can understand why it might have meant more to him than anyone thought, because we are in this generation of football now where they've all either grown up watching the YouTube videos of the Galacticos, Zidane, Ronaldo, Figo, Carlos, etc., or Cristiano Ronaldo's era where they all win in the Champions League year after year after year after year.
I don't...
But that's why they want to be part of it.
But I still don't really get that. I still always find that, like, does that make you like Real Madrid more that they won it every single year? I always find that surely would make it, I don't know. It just doesn't make them attractive to me. I'm not fully on board with Doyley's like they're the worst club in the history of the world, but I don't find Real Madrid.
I can compare it to a little bit of F1 here. There's this famous Sebastian Vettel quote that's, even if you don't like Ferrari, you like Ferrari. Yeah, I knew you'd be doing that.
Sorry.
How everyone's a little bit a Ferrari fan, and that's the equivalent of Real Madrid.
I can get what you mean there. I mean, you can sort of like Real Madrid while still being a sort of hardcore Liverpool fan if you are from West Derby, I guess. 26-year-old lad from West Derby. Yeah, I mean, I suppose this probably be the last time we'll speak about Trent, I guess. So he's made his decision, and clearly he's at peace with it. He said some nice things about Liverpool, the way it was handled, and the manager, the players, the owners. He said some very nice things about them, and they were very supportive of his decision. So yeah, he's made his decision.
He's left the door ajar for a return one day if it was ever on the cards. But at the same time, it kind of makes me wish that he'd just spoken during the season. I know you could say it was a distraction to the league title chase and everything, but he obviously he spoke really well. He gave some good answers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Spanish is going to irritate some Liverpool supporters. Some of the answers are as well, like he's talking about Real Madrid winning 3 Champions Leagues in a row, and that opened his eyes to it. Well, he lost one of those finals, if I'm right. So it's a difficult one there.
2.
Yeah, but in the row I'm in.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I thought you were going to continue to. Yeah, no, I agree. And to be fair, it's good that Liverpool acted with class throughout, and I think it underlines how well the club deal with these sorts of situations. So,
Florentino Perez, by the way, we have a great relationship with Liverpool.
Since when?
Not sure about that.
Yeah,
He's just seen his nose growing as he said it.
They're definitely getting each other in the Champions League phase this year again, aren't they?
Yeah.
Trent back at Anfield soon.
Right, we will leave it there. We'll be back on Monday. Will we be back on Monday, Gus? Is there any?
Well, that's a look at my schedule, really,
Yeah,
and then let you know.
Yeah, you let us know.
But it'd be good if Ian could confirm if he says yeah.
Put his mic on and we can have this argument, and
I'll be here,
he'll be here.
ready to go,
Yeah.
producing live.
So it wasn't even his fault, actually.
Sorry?
It wasn't even his fault.
No. Are you doing a public apology?
No.
Look down the lens.
Not apologising for that.
So you're pointing the finger at?
No, it's just no one.
Right, we'll be back on Monday. If you'd like to send a question, talk transfers, talk anything else, pop it over to my email, joe.rimmer@reachplc.com. We'll get it on the agenda for Monday. Otherwise, keep an eye out for YouTube. We can you can always ask it in the comments there. Who's joining us on Monday? You in?
I'm in, yeah.
I'm off.
You're off. So it'll be Paul and Ian who will be heading towards his location and get as much of him as you can.
You in?
Yeah, I'm in Monday. Cool. Right, I'll see you on Monday. Thanks for listening. Thanks, gents. Ta-ra.